Good morning and welcome. My name is Kirby. This is Knife Fork Book. It's a pleasure to join you this Sunday morning. I'm actually thinking of considering this as a regular feature because I like Sunday mornings. And I remember my mom, her favorite show is Sunday morning. It used to be Charles Kuralt. And then it turned into another Charles that I didn't really, no one watched. And now, of course, there's Jane Pauley, everybody's mother, at least, mine from growing up. So what a pleasure that you're joining us at our Sunday service. And of course, we're here to celebrate the release and launch of Amanda Earle's gorgeous, stunning book, Matthew, which is a Vispo, part of the Vispo Bible. And I can't tell you what a joy it is to be holding this and be holding this. And I'm looking forward to our conversation, Amanda, to talk further. Oh, of course, of course, Dennis and Judith, which of course, what luck and good fortune to have these both, arriving in pretty much the same window. So that's a really, really sweet thing. I just want to say, and happy Pride, everybody. I know in Toronto, we're not necessarily having an official Pride, which means there's going to be Pride. I'm absolutely certain that the Queens are going to be taking over this neighborhood, regardless of the law. And and we have a lot of Pride things happening in our shop. Of course, I just wanted to alert you to a few titles, KFB titles connected to Pride, specifically Brandy Ryan and Carrie Mander's After Pulse, which is absolutely brilliant. And that's currently there. Neil Sircon, Their Queer Tenderness. I don't want to say much more about that than what the title embodies, which is sweet. Oh, I love this. I love this. Of course, our newest full length, Yes, I Am a Corpse Flower by Travis Sharp. I cannot recommend this highly enough. It has split me wide open. So, and Travis, as well as Joshua Escobar, who wrote Bareback Nightfall. They're going to be opening for me a week this Tuesday night. I'm going to be doing a sneak preview of my upcoming book, Poetry is Queer, an evening called I Am a Professional Homosexual. And that will be happening Tuesday on the 29th at 8 p.m. And I encourage you that's also on pre-order right now at knifeforkbook.shop. The reason I'm bringing your attention to that is during Pride, with every pre-order of the book, we're donating $1 to Meal Trans, which is a drop-in program at the 519 for trans people of all stages. And they have a meal program and a little drop-in center. And I can't imagine a more worthy cause. I'm going to be matching dollar for dollar every pre-order sale. So please take a look at that as well. I would really appreciate it. And this morning, I'm with two of my favorite buys. Amanda Earle, AIDAN CHAFE. What a pleasure to be with you. AIDAN's book, of course, is Gospel Drunk. Gospel Drunk, one of my favorite collections of the year thus far. This was done, this was selected for KFB Selects. I can't tell you how deeply I've connected with this work, AIDAN, and I loved your debut as well. So we're going to hear from Gospel Drunk, and then we're going to engage with one of my favorite playmates, Amanda Earle. So first, let me do a land acknowledgement. We're grateful to live on the ancestral shared territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Six Nation Confederacy, and most recently the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. This territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Anishinaabeg and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Settler colonialism and the residential school system continue to harm the physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual well-being of the peoples indigenous to this land. We acknowledge this territory in order to witness and act in solidarity against these ongoing injustices and in the spirit of upholding our treaty obligations. It's no longer okay just to read the acknowledgement. We must act. Did I mention it's a joy to be with you? You know, we'll get back to the gospel because I've got so much personal history around. I used to, honey, at 9, we'd be talking Jesus. I was a childhood preacher. I was holding the book and saying, I've got a message. And of course, my faith grew to include others. So I'm grateful for that as well. But AIDAN Chafe is the author of Short Histories of Light, which was nominated for the Gerald Lampert Memorial Award. He lives on the ancestral unceded homelands of the Coast Salish peoples, Burnaby, BC. I am so grateful that for AIDAN, it's the early service today. So please join me in welcoming poet AIDAN Chafe.
Thank you, KIrby. Thank you, Amanda. It's an honor to be here today. Yes, I'm all the way over here on the left coast, so it's an early service. I do want to acknowledge that I am on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples, and those peoples are the peoples of the river. We kind of have a delta here on the left coast in Vancouver and the greater Vancouver area. And so those peoples here specifically would include the Kakite, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam. So I'll just read from my book. I'm excited to hear Amanda, and I've just kind of gotten into a lot of the visual poetry and the beautiful stuff that she's doing with the most read text in the world. So I'll kind of begin with poems that kind of deal with what a lot of people around the world do on a Sunday. I'll start off with Struggling Protagonist. In the beginning, God created sound and used it as a blunt object. He gave some animals wings, but no hope of flying. Others he banished to the ocean, too hideous for his eyes. He made science a red herring for skeptics and philosophers, so he could take the form of gadfly, sloshing through wine, buzzing into Athenian bathhouses and Roman forums. None of these things made him happy. Now God takes the form of a wild horse galloping over hills, or a flower in a field waiting to be plucked. Sometimes he's the wind whistling above water, wishing his reflection would appear. Indelible. The internet informs me at 5,300 years, Otzi, the Iceman, is the oldest body with tattoos. Smoking outside Our Lady of Mercy, a man scribed a Jesus fish onto the canvas of his sunburnt arm. Inside the gym, a boy with an explosion of veins pulls his dumbbell closer to his heart, flexes Ezekiel 25:17. A woman with a bumper sticker, "What would Jesus do?" cuts me off in traffic. And I wonder, how would Jesus feel about his name being incorporated, bled over billboards, "I'll be back" printed on t-shirts, his followers immortalizing themselves in scripture to ensure they too are not forgotten. The Light Salesman. They came on a Saturday, wearing their Sunday best. They came ringing bells with songs in their lungs. They came high on resolve, itching for ears. They came before my first coffee. They came when I was not dressed, eating peanut butter on toast. When my mind was miserable and misunderstood, they came. They came when I was afraid of honesty and the best of me was hiding. They came waltzing in with wings, with fireflies in the belly, hawking broken flashlights. They spoke of the electrician, asked if I'd seen him, wondered if I was looking, and how long I'd been in the dark. They claimed to know his whereabouts, offered me a map with his coordinates. I remained silent, holding the door. How could I say no to salvation? This next poem is titled Mary Too. Did Mary give consent to Gabriel, or did God just decide for her? When she conceived, did she feel violated? When her body pushed, did she think, why me? A priest presses the moon onto my tongue like a stone for the stomach. I get no answers. Kneeling on the plank at my pew, I look up to see a granite man stuck to a cross, hung chain-linked from the ceiling. Outside, alone in the courtyard, his marble mother weeping. This next poem is titled Land in the Name of Taking. We harden in the arms of faith, barbed wire fingers, stone faces, rebar rib cages. Everything I know about honor is buried in the ground. Even tonight, while I make dreams, missiles are making music in the skies over Gaza. Forged absolution from an airstrike. Silence stacks silence on the rubble and remains. Blood creeps through the streets. Men burn calories for war. God's figurines lay expendable in his sandbox. Not one chosen among others, lifted by his hands, pulled beyond the clouds. I'll read a few more and then I'll close. This poem's titled Hard Rain. With his tractor tires trenched in the mud, the farmer wept as his cows were swept by the flood. When clouds lashed out from above, the president played golf while his people lost their city to the flood. A boy sulked over sunken ships in his tub. When God cried, they had to name it the Great Flood. My father hid his depression out of love. Our basement revealed its secrets in the flood. I won't build an ark of fear if water comes. Earth's a droplet, not a tear when it floods. I'll read two more. This next poem is titled Sonnet in Defense of Lust. We read our bodies in the basement. Our fingers scribe notes in our skin. We filled margins of the Bible with urgency. They named us sinners. Perdition is common perjury. Why worship at the same altar as hate? The test of a man's testament is permission. So what if I've coveted the flesh of 1,000 strangers, binged on beauty at the feast of youth? Love is saccharine, not sacred. How many loves have been lost not loving? When I breathe in my last breath, I won't be reminded of faith by death. And I'll end with a poem about Noah. It's called Fallen. Build, and it shall be built. Drink, and you shall get drunk. In a witnessing tent, wine washed away to sleep. Your 500-year-old body, naked, vomit stained. Could you smell the water in your dreams? Was it guilt that led you here? The stench of God's filthy animals, the sins that walked away with you from the ark? Were there ghosts in ghastly visions, a silt bed of bony corpses obstructing thoughts of sea? What awoken you to plant grapeseed, to sacrifice reputation like a lamb? Speak, frail hero, speak, Noah. Have you heard what your sons call you? Thank you for listening. And I'm looking forward to listening to KIrby and Amanda continue this this wonderful morning.
Thank you so much, Aidan. Thanks for getting up to be with us. Thanks for your words, for your book. The book is Gospel Drunk. It's put out by the University of Alberta Press. You'll be able to find this at knifeforkbook.shop. Amanda, congratulations on Matthew. I'm not exactly certain how or when we decided to do this work, except I knew that you had a few books of the Bible that were finished, and you gave me a few to select from. And when I saw Matthew, I just, my whole body surged and said, yes, we've got to do this. We've got to do this. Now, part of that is I'm a gospel queen. Part of that, it's the first book of the New Testament, right? And one that I'm very familiar with. But truthfully, it was just so fucking beautiful. I couldn't say no. I mean, I love making pretty things. And when I saw the beauty of your work transforming the book of Matthew, I was overjoyed. And I feel so honored and blessed to be the publisher with you on this work. And I want to give a real special shout out to Ralph Kaleve, who I know is here today. And Ralph, your meticulous patience in design and layout, and also the way that you're able to collaborate and work with both Amanda and myself to realize this vision. I cannot thank you enough. I'm sure Amanda will say what she needs to say around that. Also, I want to thank David Bernstein. David Bernstein's the publisher, was the printer of the work, and he was equally kind in his recommendations and choice of paper. And I really think one of the things that I feel best about KFB is that our aim is to serve the book. And I truly believe that this one has been served quite well. Let me introduce you. Amanda Earl. Her visual poetry has been exhibited in Canada, Brazil, and Russia, and published in the last Vispo anthology, Visual Poetry 1998 to 2008. A field guide for fanciful bugs through above ground, Of the Body, bone sampling, a collaboration with Gary Barwin from her own Angel House Press. And she's also appeared online in many, many journals, Brave New World, Angry Old Man. There's many, many here. And on top of that, she has, Gary Barwin gave a lovely write-up on Amanda's visual poetry in Jacket 2. But Gary says, what kind of is this? Amanda Earl and the Synesthesia of Reading. I'm not certain if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but would you say that again?
Synesthesia.
Thank you. We'll come back to that. But what's not in this bio is Judith, which for me is a new Bible. It's absolutely extraordinary. And we'll touch upon this as well before you go. But would you please join me in welcoming Amanda Earl? What a pleasure. You know, Amanda, you said that one of the ways that you got, or that you decide on who is doing your books, of the Vispo Bible, has happened through meetings with publishers. And I was just curious about that, because you mentioned like being at Meet the Presses and other things where you actually meet somebody who you feel you would like to see do your book, do your work. And I'm curious, clearly that's worked out for you. The, you know, Blasted Tree, the John from Blasted Tree, I think is just jaw-dropping, and Revelations, of course, from Timeless Set. So thanks for coming to my table, because that way you and I could, but we met prior to that, actually. Anyway, do you want to say more about that and about publishers in general and how you work with them?
First, before I say that, I want to say thank you to Aidan for that great reading. I mentioned that I read Gospel Drunk when I was in the hospital just at the end of March, beginning of April this year, and it was great. It was the night before I was waiting to leave the hospital, so I was happy to have a good thing, interesting thing to read, and that was great. Also, KIrby, thank you for this beautiful book, and Ralph, you know, you've done a phenomenal job. I'm getting so many compliments on this, and of course I take them for myself instead of giving you any credit. No, I give you lots of credit, so that's great. And thanks to everyone who's here. This is really lovely to see everyone as well, and thanks for putting on this celebration of Matthew and of the Gospels and things. Publishers, well, you know, I've been around now for some time, so I've been sharing my work publicly for 20 years. And I've had a chance to get to know a lot of different publishers, but and yeah, small press fairs like Meet the Presses and the one here in Ottawa, and there was one in Montreal, to Exposine, which I've gone to as a publisher as well a few times. So over the years, you do tend to meet people and you see the great work that's being done, but you also talk to people. Simulacrum Press, Sasha Archer, and where is he? Is he in? It's not Hamilton. It's I can't remember.
Burlington.
Thank you. I should know that. I used to live in Mississauga, but of course my Toronto brain is gone from my head now. But yeah, so I've had a lot of, and of course Tim Glassett Editions published Revelation as well. So yeah, it's been great, and it's nice to know publishers. If you can, you can't always know them well, but if I see beautifully made work, if I see that a publisher is involved in the community, if I see values of the publisher that I like publishers that uplift other publishers. I don't really like to work with the ones that have this kind of attitude of superiority, and they kind of, you know, those ones that say we're the best at this, and like I don't like the word the best. I think it's a little bit of an odd thing to say when you only have a small amount of the world that you know about. I'm about learning more and more. So I look for values that are similar. And if I'm lucky, I get to work with great publishers like Knife Fork Book. So I don't know, but I don't think it's different from the process of the Vispo Bible is difficult because some of it is it can be all black and white, or it can be color. And so, for instance, and this one was going to be difficult because, of course, it's white text on you can't really see it, but you can see all the black, and so this would be difficult to do well, and this is a well done, even the choices of everything, the paper and everything. And also, since I also publish, and my husband and I also publish, we sort of have ideas about how things should be done, maybe more than we should sometimes as authors, but you know, so yeah, I have opinions about, and visual poetry is tricky to publish because people confuse resolution with dimension. So like that's not the same thing. Like, so a physical dimension isn't the same as resolution. You make the piece as big as you can resolution wise, so that the designer can then size it according to the physical dimensions. And if it's too small pixel wise, it's going to show up really poorly in the physical book. So yeah, those are issues. It's very difficult. And a lot of times publishers of literary works have trouble with visual poetry because they don't know how to, they don't know that. They don't know how to lay out an image that way. They don't know from pixels, right? They know from words. They don't know from pixels. That's the way it goes.
Well, we certainly have appreciated the learning curve on this one, and I just knew that we wanted to make something really, really pretty, and serve the work itself, serve the text itself, serve the images, which are just stunning. There isn't a page that I don't open to that I'm not completely enchanted by. So, and that to me is where is the deepest self to be found? In your deepest enchantment. So I'll never forget, I was talking to another poet who also, this landed in their lap and they were speaking really fondly of it. And they said that some of these reminded them of the transforming creatures in the film The Abyss.
Yeah, yeah.
The water creatures that could change
I
shape
love
and
that.
everything, and how they appear. And yeah, I really love that too. And I think
Yeah.
partly why I love that was I'm so jealous that you're approaching this work not as a biblical scholar or not as somebody associated in any way with the religiosity of this. I mean, when you said that um, you got your first Bible from a vicar, and
Yeah.
then yeah, and then it's not even, you made up your own stories. I mean, which I love. I love. I used to. I had a children's Bible with a zipper, and of
Yeah.
course all of the Jesus words in red, because that was really important.
That's what they
But
did. Yeah.
but I ended up later on. I used to hide my porn in it
Perfect.
because, of course, no one in my family is going to pick up my Bible, and it had a zipper, so that was pretty. That was pretty. So it was really. And let me tell you, I could illustrate that Bible really well with probably Colossians, the Galatians,
I did
Romans.
that. That's
So
fantastic.
in terms of illustrating and making up your own story,
Yeah.
I love that. But mostly what you say about play. And I think this element more than anything else is lacking and languishing in a lot of poetic work these days. Can you and I talk a little bit more about play
You can
and
always
about
talk about play.
the fidgeting, all of that that you'd please play on. Say more about that process for you.
So I guess, other than love in my life and in my creative work, I have three sort of missions as part of my work: exploration, connection with fellow kindreds and misfits and weirdos like me, and the other one is whimsy, and that whimsy is play. So, and it's driven partly by Lorca's sense of the duende, and the duende. There's a really great essay by Lorca that was translated into English, called Theory and Play, or Theory and Function of the Duende. And the idea is there's some examples, but for instance, he gives an example of a flamenco dancer who suddenly grabs long knives and dances with the knives. So it's kind of this being able to be creative, feel a sense of urgency, and that sort of thing. So yeah, I like to play. I mean, I have lots of good influences around me. For instance, I've done a lot of, for years, I was doing workshops with Rob McLennan. Many of you know, is an Ottawa writer and publisher, and just a really great person to know. And he in these workshops, he would always introduce us to a lot of writers that were not in a lot of literary journals that I was seeing, maybe in Canada or elsewhere too. So, and they tended to be a lot of times very playful. And then we have some examples in Canada of playful people who work very playfully, like, well, BP Nicol is a good example. There's a real Renaissance person who worked in more modern, Gary Barwin, and I would say the visual poets too that we have as well, like in people like Kate Siclosi and Danny Spinoza. Danny Spinoza, for instance, she does all kinds of interesting things. Like, I read a chapbook of hers, I don't remember now, but where she's responding to a video game. I mean, a lot. So we have a lot of great. I think there's a lot of really great people playing around with things, and but I don't often see that reflected, for instance, in literary journals. I think literary journals can be a little on the serious side, so sometimes that's frustrating to see. Like, a lot of play is about basically using your brain and doing what if, and like, so there's a Carl Jung's Red Book, and he talked about the idea of entering into the spirit of play, getting back to the childlike sort of ways. It helps with your brain, right? It helps to, so it's not just a kind of a some people see it as a frivolity alone, and I think that's fine. I don't know what's wrong with frivolity, but some people have a problem with frivolity. First of all, it's a beautiful word. It's orange. But the other thing is, aside from that, it's the way we exercise our brains. So I think, and it's the way they invent things too. I wish I had an example of a great invention that was invented because they were playing, and that's how. But they exist. I just can't remember right now. So.
Well, it's fascinating because, you know, I always say I know when something's good is when I start to giggle from my belly and clench my toes. And that's my work. I go, oh my God. And I used to go, oh, Kirby, can you possibly say that? And that's exactly what went down on the page, darling. And then I would giggle and I go, oh my God. So that's the kind of fun play. And you say, I get a spine tingle when the work looks right.
Yeah.
And spine tingle. Yeah, I mean, I'm extremely visceral as a poet, and in terms of even what I respond to poetically. So when I got that little spine tingle, and the a lot of people want to know that a lot of these interviews go, how do you know when a poem is finished?
Yeah. I don't
You
know.
know, you know, that sort of thing. But there is that all of a sudden it clicks, and there's that delight,
Yeah.
which is remarkable. And I have this picture of you in your workspace playing and fidgeting and finding that exact thing that delights you.
Thanks. Yeah. And the other thing too is when it goes wrong, I have to redo it, like, because it's not right. It's not right. And right now I'm working on, well, I'm not working on, right now I'm not working on Joshua, but that's the current book that I'm working on. And I tried to do the first few with Illustrator, and I'm not happy. And I know I'm already about on the 10th chapter of Joshua now, and I already know I have to go back and do those first few over again because they're not right. So I'll have to go back and redo them. So
Yeah. But you know, that's also the play. That's also, I mean, I'm sure it can be also equally frustrating. You're trying to get
yeah.
this thing. You know, I have no idea of your technical process. Is it laborious?
It is laborious. Well, okay, so I use Photoshop mostly, and the thing about Photoshop is that it used to be a relatively stable piece of software, but I'm using it for text, right? I'm not using it for editing photos. My husband uses it for editing photos. That's how come we have it. But he was shocked when interested, like he was happy when he saw what I was doing, but he'd never seen stuff like that. All I was doing is I was saying, what if I try this? What if I try that? What if I try that? And eventually I got to a series of stages, a series of things in Photoshop that worked for me. And then for several years, that was fine. Like I started working using Photoshop maybe 2009 or so, and then maybe 2010. And then a few years ago, every time you turn around, they keep changing the program. And Ralph is nodding. I can see Ralph nodding because he's experienced it, I'm sure. But it's so frustrating. So Genesis, the first book that I did, which is 50 chapters, 50 visual poems, I cannot do the same things I did then now. So yeah, it's kind of frustrating, but also I'm learning more, and I learned how to do things differently as well. Matthew, I actually did the whole thing first in black on white. And then Charles said to me, he said, well, have you thought of doing it the other way around, like white on black? I'm like, oh, but I said, I won't be able to publish it in print anywhere. So, but okay, let's try it and see what happens. And then I had to just make a few changes, but basically 28 visual poems all had to be edited again. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not well behaved. Like, you know, a good practice if you're going to try this at home is save, they're the Photoshop files, the PSD files. So save them as you go, and then try a new version. So that way you haven't totally destroyed the previous one that you liked. But no, I don't do stuff like that. I just go for it. And then, so, you know, I can never, sometimes I see something great and I say, but what if I do this? And I'm the queen of layering. I love layering the text. It's a very material thing. It changes from a sort of a flat two-dimensional thing to this more of a 3D thing, and I love layering and repetition. So I'm sure that there are a lot of the sections of the book of Matthew, for instance, are repeated over and over again in that text. That when the more sort of, some of them that look more tactile, maybe just repeated. And that's fun too. For Revelation, I would repeat them the number of times that the numbers were mentioned, like the number 7 was used a lot. So I would repeat 7 times, things like that.
I'm just going to show a few beautiful examples for those of you that might not have the book in hand just yet. I love, I know there's some favorites of yours, Amanda, including these glorious these glorious,
Yeah.
and this beautiful headpiece. I look at it as a headpiece, but it could be a shawl, I
Yeah.
suppose. It's so quite stunning. But my favorite in the book, I'd be happy to show you. They're a little more intricate and maybe a little more difficult to see, but it's this
That was
gorgeous
hard to
thing.
see.
I know they look like creatures to me, little walking creatures from maybe an episode of Johnny Quest. Really, really pretty. So I'm going to be remiss if I don't ask. I know you've covered this train before. Why the Bible?
Okay, that's a good question. You know, I have a few answers for this. So there's several answers. One of them is something I actually went back to my very first blog entry about the work on June the 14th, 2015. And I said something that I had sort of forgotten that was the initial spring for the work, which is because of my health crisis. I had a near-death health crisis in 2009. I was supposed to die. I was done. The doctors told Charles that I could die either in ICU or on the operating table. So he chose operating table, and here I am. But the point is that, yay. But after the fact, there's a part of me that not so much why, but like how it's just sort of like, well, it's kind of astonishing to me. So I guess as part of that astonishment, I almost felt like I had do I have guardian angels protecting me or something? So that those thoughts went through my mind. So there is a kind of a reverence to the to responding to that work. But on the other hand, as I'm working through the text and as I'm doing a little bit of research about the Bible, especially for a current part of that now, I see it more as a defiant feminist response to that work, which is, of course, has been misogynistic and xenophobic and homophobic and every other phobic, hateful, and it's being used that way. But it's also being employed in literature and art as, for instance, A Paradise Lost. I love Divine Comedy, Dante's Divine Comedy. And then the other thing is, from a very practical standpoint, when I started making visual poetry, I was working like a lot of people work on individual letters and looking at the graphical qualities of the letters and twisting them and turning them and making them sort of come to life that way. And then I tried to use things like quotes from people. So I'd have longer and longer text to work with, because when you work with more text, you have more possible. At least I have more possibilities. And so the Bible is freely available online. You can go to BibleGateway.com, and so I just cut and paste the text. And I have to tell you, at first I was sort of diligently reading through them, but I stopped doing that. And I mean, there are things I know about the Bible from sort of, through I haven't had a very religious upbringing, that's for sure, not at all. But I've had a few intersections with, and certainly through literature, I've had a chance to study some aspects of the Bible as well. So yeah, it's a book that it intrigues me. I would love to have the Vispo Bible in hotel rooms, and every hotel room, that would be cool, as for people to use as inspiration or solace or prayer or defiance in whatever way. So yeah.
My God, I would much more love to go to my hotel room and open up and catch up with Matthew than that, well, never mind.
We have to put a zipper on.
The KJV or the Red Book, as one might say. Wow, because honest to God,
Honest to God.
to be free of that kind of baggage, right, is what also delighted me. I mean, you were talking about how, yeah, I love to take on repurposing, reframing, making it yours. All of that is kin to my skin, as you well know. You also talked about having a almost like a self-awakening or self-awareness in your 30s with regards to, in a sense, being introduced to art.
Yeah.
Can you share more about that?
Yeah, when I was in my 30s, my life changed quite dramatically. I had been in a long-term relationship from the time I was 18 until then I married. I married in my 20s. So and then a lovely person, but I grew up and grew out of the relationship. So divorced at in my mid-30s, and at that point I started to explore. I started to take a poetry workshop at Ottawa U. I started to be introduced to a lot of people. I started to make friends with people in the art, people who were artists and poets and singers and all that stuff. So yeah, I started. I was kind of, I mean, some people have midlife crises. Mine maybe was an earlier than midlife crisis. So I think it was part of my figuring out of what was going on. And the other thing is about me is that I have what's called, which we'll refer to, you were going to talk about synesthesia, which is a blending of senses. And in my case, it's grapheme synesthesia. So that what happens is letters, numbers, days of the week, months, also pain, in my head show up as colors, so certain colors. So yeah, so I guess I don't know, in my first life I was concentrating more on school, career, my life with my first husband and our business together. We ran a business, and I kind of didn't have time for a lot of the creative stuff. I was writing but not seeing it as part of anything. It's just something I did, like breathing. But then in sort of that when in my mid-30s, when I moved to my very first apartment on my own. I met Charles like 6 months later, and he moved in. So, but that's when I started to explore. I have a friend who was a curator at the Ottawa Art Gallery, and now is a curator at the Owens Art Gallery in Sackville, New Brunswick, Emily Falvey, and she is one of the people who introduced me to a lot of great art as well, like a local art, which is really interesting. Otherwise, we tend to see mostly art from like at the National Gallery or at major art galleries, which is wonderful, but you want to see also local work and contemporary work as well. So, and I don't know, a lot of my writing in general is inspired by the art that I see as well. I wish I had money to buy art. So that would be great. Yeah.
I just remember there was 3 amazing institutions that opened me up as a child, and that was the art museum, and of course the library, and just being introduced to books. But
Yeah.
but my mom would drop me off every Saturday morning to the art museum for music appreciation classes.
Wow, nice
Whatever
mom.
that, I know my mother every Saturday morning, God love her. And it was at a time when you could just be dropped off, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, 8, 9.
Yeah.
And my entire day was spent in every nook and cranny of that museum.
Wow. Wow.
And to, yeah, to live and breathe in all of that beauty and that work and how it filled my eyes. And there was the downtown library branch in Toledo, this is Toledo, Ohio, had this, it was majestic. You know, you walked in and there was this gorgeous ceramic mural of actually about labor, very similar to Diego Rivera's work. And then they had, when you got to the children's area, they had similar mosaics in ceramic of all the children's story, like The Cow Jumped Over the Moon and Jack Be Nimble and all of that. And it was wonder. It made that whole thing filled with wonder. So when you talk about out with the old, in with the new, which I think is I love that we have cycles in life where, you know, okay, well, that's over and I'm ready for something completely new, including, go ahead,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was so like my first sort of existence I was so practical, right? It was all about I was training to be a translator because that's what I was going to school for, and it was all about security and money and just sort of making sure I had a place to live and all this. So I didn't think about anything like that. Like I didn't engage with art, and you know, I have to tell you what tends to resonate most for me is abstract art. So I just like when I first saw Mark Rothko's work, I was already in my 30s when I first actually noticed it. So I was like, and I really responded to that. Like I just fell in love with it.
You, me, and Rothko, darling. There was a gorgeous Rothko in the Toledo Museum as well. And when I graduated from university, the first thing I had done was I had bought a bus ticket. And Greyhound had like you got to ride anywhere for 30 days. You bought a bus pass and you
Yeah.
could ride anywhere for 30 days. And I made a map from Toledo down to the Rothko Chapel in Houston and
Wow,
stopped at every location where there was a museum with a Rothko on the way.
that's amazing. That sounds
And
like
that was, yeah. And because that was, again, you witness a work and you're transformed by it, which I can only say is equally true of this work.
that's nice.
It's not a comparison. It's not a comparison to Rothko.
No, please.
It's what delights us. It's what holds us. You know, always surprised me. I'd be in the room and people would walk right through, not even noticing the Rothko. And I'd go, how could that possibly happen? But everybody has their own what hits them, right?
Yeah.
So it's remarkable. But my curiosity, if we can just shift gears slightly, because I would be again remiss if we didn't picture the elephant in the room, which is Judith.
Yes, Judith is an
Now,
elephant.
I mean, because yeah,
Mine's over there.
darling, for some reason, I don't know, but for some reason, this just felt like it came out of nowhere. Which is, well, in terms of,
Yeah.
okay, on top of that, one of the most successful kick-ass Kickstarter campaigns
Yeah.
I've ever witnessed.
Yeah, I
And
me too.
yeah. So congratulations on this as well. Can you share a little bit about your love and passion for this? I am so grateful this exists in the world now. And now we actually have more of an accurate history of what women, bring to the field. Can you say a little bit more?
Sure. Judith needed to be done. Judith, Women Making Visual Poetry was a book that's been needed for a long time. I pitched the idea to a publisher in around 2015, a Canadian publisher who shall remain nameless. But I mean, it's impossible to do this book in Canada. It's a full color book. But in 2018, I found out about Tim Glassett editions in Sweden. Yeah, look at that. This is great work. That's Mado Resnick. Yeah, Tim Glassett editions in Sweden. I'd seen a full color book that they'd done of that's Mara Patricia Hernandez. I can name them all, but I'd seen a full color book that he'd done for Gary Barwin and I thought, woo, full color. And I had at that point I'd done Revelation. And in 2018, and Revelation is full color as well. So I was looking for a home for it. And I asked the publisher of Tim Glassett Editions, Joachim Norling, and he only started, I think, 2017, 2018. He could correct me if I'll ask him later or whatever. But and I approached him at Revelation, and he did a beautiful job on Revelation. It's a gorgeous. I think it's what's the size? It's a European size A5 or something like that, and it's orange. He asked me for Revelation. He said, "What color is the word Revelation for you?" And I sold him the orange, and I showed him the exact orange, and he tried to get that for the cover. So anyway, I knew I was working with someone wonderful. He did a great job on Revelation, and then I asked him. That's Kate Ciclosi of Toronto, your one, darling Kate, and yeah.
Yes.
So that's how. And I asked him if he would be interested in doing a full color anthology of women visual poets, and so that's how it started. We started at the beginning of 2019. Oh, there's Revelation. There it is. Yay! Nice to see. Yeah, so we started it in 2019, and then we asked. There's an example of a colorful one. I can't make that shape anymore. I don't know how to do that. So yeah, on the left. So gosh, but thanks Photoshop for changing. But so yeah, but I mean, we started in 2019. So we were basically just gathering names and stuff like that, and then we sort of picked from out of 100 women that we knew of, we picked 12 that we invited, and then we asked those 12 to invite 12 as well. But then of course during this whole process the pandemic came along, which and that was, it's been hard, and we have women contributors from all over the world. So we have contributors in Brazil and in Argentina and places that have been hit quite hard by the pandemic. And well, we have obviously there have been issues all over, but so this caused slowdowns and delays and stuff like that. But basically the book has happened much faster than I think both of us were expecting, because once we you know, once we, I don't know, it gained a momentum. And then the crowdfunding campaign, we weren't expecting it to be as amazing as it was. I mean, all the people here, I mean, so many people, thank you all who contributed to that. And we made almost double the amount that Joachim had asked for. And so he was able to add more pages to the book, and it's now gone into the first printing of 400. It's now, that one is that one sold out, and he shipped all those copies, so he actually had to order a second printing of 300 copies. And you understand that Joachim, what he does is he packs and everything all in his apartment, and then he takes them copies by bicycle to his local post office in Malmo in Sweden to ship them off. So he's getting a lot of exercise with all of this. But you know, it's been fantastic, and I'm really grateful to all the contributors, the essayists as well, and just everyone that, and Joachim especially. He and I become really great friends as well. So yeah, I feel really glad to. I'm really happy the book exists. I was, of course, nervous, and I still am, about what giant mistakes have we made, you know, and stuff like that. But so far, so good. I feel like we're. You know, I'm really happy about the book. And the other thing too about the book is we have that list of women making visual poetry that is growing. It's back online now to add more women as well. And someone asked me a question, which I kind of, I'm going to share with you because it's an awkward question and I want to address it. Someone said, well, do you mean women? But what about women, those who identify as women? I said, to me, I said, well, that's the same thing. That's the same thing. You identify as, you're a woman. Like, what the hell? You know, so anyway, so women making visual poetry, that's the book. And it's named after the great Judith Copperthorne, who is our great Canadian visual poet, who started making visual poetry in the, I guess, in the 60s, and is still active today. So, and I love her work, and she influenced mine a great deal. So that's where that came from.
Thank you. Thank you. Darling, what a pleasure. What a pleasure to be here this morning with you. And I just want to take a moment and thank everybody for joining us. And I'm just wondering, was there anything else that you wanted to say in conclusion regarding this publication here?
Well, yeah, just to say thank you again, and I hope everyone has a copy, and thanks also to KIrby for putting on this celebration. It's hard to know what to do with visual poetry and how to present it to an audience. So again, thanks to all of you for coming, and thanks again, Ralph, for doing such a magnificent job. I was sort of complaining I'm not the easiest person to work with, but he took it all in stride. So yeah, no, that was lovely. And this is a lovely, thank you very much. I love the book, and I've loved working with you on it and all the things we've done with it. And I really appreciate everyone's support and interest. And
I simply want to say it is an honor and privilege to have this in the world. And I'm so glad we could do this together. I also want to say that this is available at knifeforkbook.shop. All of you attending today, if you use the promo code SHIPFREE, guess what? Guess what? Ship free. And I'm going to extend that to Aidan's book as well, Gospel Drunk. Use the promo code SHIPFREE, and I can't even imagine a better package to arrive at your door. I do the same thing as your friend in Sweden. Is it Sweden that's that?
Yeah.
I post just about every other day. I go to the post office and send these out. So please take advantage and purchase both of these titles. Oh, they sell themselves. I don't have to do a goddamn hard sell. Anyway, Aidan, thank you so much for joining us, Aidan. Thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you both.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for attending. We'll talk to you soon. Be kind to yourselves. Enjoy the day. Thanks for holding good space with us this morning. Okay. Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. I love you, little cuddle toy. Be well, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.